It's a new week, so welcome to a brand new episode of Pixel Peak.
That's right, Laird. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the whole host thing.
I'm sure we'll get a hang of it. After all, we have to get in a ton of practice before we go live next week.
Right. As much as I would rather not accept it, GameStop is closing a ton of stores in the next few months. We have to talk about that.
And don't forget that Discord is stepping out of the digital game distribution market by no longer offering free games to Discord Nitro users.
Nintendo's even continuing to take down emulation and privacy websites, and they've been dishing out a few lawsuits. Is there any good news this week?
You'll just have to stay tuned. You should also stay to see our game reviewer, Bianca Bortoluzzi, rein in 505 Games' newest title, Control, in this week's game review. I've heard it's pretty good.
And to wrap up this week's episode, we have our PC analyst, Walker Peters, coming in to talk to us about the seemingly endless problem of loot boxes.
We have a lot to share this week, so let's get this show on the road. I'm Laird Davis.
And I'm Sydney Thompson, and we hope you enjoy your stay here on Pixel Peak. GameStop announced last week that it will close as many as 200 stores by the end of 2019. This announcement comes after operating at a loss of $32 million to end the quarter. The company's chief financial officer, James Bell, commented that the drop in sales is consistent with what we have historically observed towards the end of a hardware cycle. GameStop currently has nearly 6,000 stores worldwide, 4,000 of them being in North America. This latest announcement comes after GameStop laid off more than 100 employees last month, including half the staff of Game Informer magazine. Bell added that more store closures are expected in larger numbers in the coming years as the industry continues to trend more digital. GameStop ended the latest quarter with a double-digit decline in sales. In the previous quarter, GameStop reported a 13.3% decline in sales, which resulted in the company's stock dropping 40% in one day. GameStop has been on a gradual decline since the rise of online game sales, which has reduced the availability of used games to be sold, a staple that the company is founded on. To further wound GameStop's sales, Sony announced in April that it wouldn't allow retail partners to sell download codes for PlayStation 4 games. GameStop's continuing decline has been a long developing story and will continue to keep you updated as it develops further.
It's a new week, and Nintendo has cleared up a lingering question from last week's Nintendo Direct. What was that ring accessory? This week, Nintendo released a trailer for the new ring-shaped fitness accessory for the Nintendo Switch. The new Switch accessory was teased in last week's Nintendo Direct. In the trailer, we learned that the accessory comes with the ring-con and leg strap to track player movement with the Switch controllers. The accessory was built exclusively to a new fitness-based adventure game called Ring Fit Adventure. Ring Fit Adventure is a level-based adventure game that has your character running courses and defeating monsters in fit battles, all in order to defeat an evil bodybuilding dragon. Players will exercise to fuel their in-game actions. The new Ring-Con will encourage players to exercise various parts of their bodies through core muscles, arms, legs, and yoga poses. In addition to a story mode, Ring Fit Adventure includes a quick play mode with various mini-games that allows for party play with a group as shown in the teaser last week. Ring Fit Adventure is set to release on October 8th. This isn't Nintendo's first attempt on getting gamers moving. In a lot of ways, utilizing motion, controls have always been a successful part of the company's brand. In 2007, Nintendo launched Wii Fit, as well as the game's accompanying balance board that tracked the player's center of balance. Wii Fit later went on to sell over 22 million copies, the third most out of any standalone Wii game not sold with the console. We won't know if Ring Fit Adventure will ever reach the same amount of success as Wii Fit, but it is interesting to see Nintendo call back to their Wii-era roots.
Last week, Discord announced that it will remove free games from the Nitro subscription. Discord came to this decision from user feedback, learning that a majority of Nitro subscribers didn't play the games. In a statement, Discord said they are very grateful to those who did support those games and will be offering refunds to those who wish to cancel their Nitro subscription. In response to this change, Discord stated in their official blog post saying, "With this change, we have the resources to refocus. We're going to double down on making sure Nitro nails its mission. More features, fun, and enhancements for hanging out in Discord with the people you care about. So please keep giving us feedback." The price of the Nitro subscription will remain $10 a month, but Discord will be adding features such as server boost, improved Go Live streaming, and increased upload size for Nitro subscribers. If you have a Nitro subscription, you'll still be able to play them for a little bit longer. The Nitro games will be removed on October 15th. Discord stated that subscribers can still play these games until October 15th, and games purchased on Discord and Nitro game perks will be unaffected by this change. Discord is a free app that doesn't make any money off of ads, making a healthy flow of subscribers vital to the company's continued success. We don't know how this change to Nitro will affect Discord subscription numbers yet, but we'll be sure to update you if the story develops any further.
2019 has been a rough year for the gaming industry. In a recent NPD Group Market Research report, the month of August saw hardware, software, and accessory sales drop 18% compared to last August. This would make last month the weakest selling period in 20 years. The same applies to the rest of the industry as well. Excluding most digital and PC sales, the rest of the industry is looking at a 6% decline in overall sales. The NPD report also found that hardware sales are down 21% for the year as people anticipate the release of the next generation of consoles. The drop in sales isn't universal, however. Nintendo actually saw an increase in Nintendo Switch sales in both August and the year to date, while the rest of the industry is dealing with declining sales. NPD analyst Matt Piscatella credits Nintendo for the industry-wide 1% increase in software sales for the year so far. With the big fall releases quickly approaching, companies will be looking for high-performing games to soften the blow of an overall disappointing year.
On September 10th, Nintendo of America filed a lawsuit against the owner of the ROM website, ROM Universe. Nintendo is seeking $150,000 in damages for infringement and as much as $2 million for trademark infringement. Nintendo claims that the games contain counterfeit copies of Nintendo's trademarks, as well as infringed on the copyright of the works themselves. ROM Universe currently offers a $30 membership that lasts members a year, and in return, users are provided with a vast amount of pirated games to download. With almost 900,000 downloads available between the Switch and 3DS, Nintendo alleges that ROMverse is one of the most visited and well-known websites for pirated Nintendo games. Nintendo has recently doubled down on piracy worldwide. Earlier this week, Nintendo won a UK court case that will require 5 popular internet providers to restrict access to 4 websites that allow users to pirate Nintendo games. These more recent court cases follow after Nintendo reached a $12 million settlement with 2 ROM sites, LoveROMs.com and LoveRetro.co last November. No doubt there will continue to be more cases like this as Nintendo continues to battle piracy websites in the near future.
Billy Mitchell, formerly considered one of the greatest Donkey Kong players in the world, threatened to sue this week to get some of his record high scores reinstated. In April 2018, Twin Galaxies decided to remove all of Mitchell's high scores from their records after determining that he had used an emulator to achieve high scores and not unmodified arcade hardware. Using an emulator allows the use of alternate control schemes and possibly cheating by manipulating replay footage. Billy Mitchell's score authenticity issues started in 2017, when a Donkey Kong forum noticed some disparities between the tape that ended up in the documentary King of Kong and the way that Donkey Kong normally renders. Twin Galaxies opened their own investigation not long after the forum post and eventually resulted in Mitchell's ban and removal of his high score records. Mitchell's legal team responded in a letter to Twin Galaxies saying that they did not provide Billy Mitchell fair opportunity to provide evidence to prove his innocence, and that specific evidence was accepted while evidence of equal stature was rejected. Mitchell's legal team is giving Twin Galaxies and Guinness World Records 2 weeks to respond to their letter with a threat of further legal action. We'll update the story as more comes to light. That's all for this week's news. Now over to Bianca for this week's game review.
Creepy government facility? Check. Crazy supernatural powers? Check. Creative storyline and character? Check. Please join us as we dive into the world of Jesse Faden and the Federal Bureau of Control in this review of Control.
Fair warning. This is gonna be weirder than usual. Can't be helped.
And she is not wrong. Released August 27th, 2019, Control is a supernatural-based third-person action-adventure game with tons of twists and turns. It was developed by Remedy and directed by Michael Kasurinen, who also helped develop and direct Quantum Break and Alan Wake. In Control, you play as Jessie Faden, a tough and mysterious woman who goes to the FBC, otherwise known as the Bureau of Control, in search for her brother Dylan. The game throws you in immediately with little to no tutorial. However, the game is rather self-explanatory, and the lack of tutorial helps keep the game a bit mysterious. The game has you search around an almost empty government facility until you're given a special gun called the service weapon and are made director of the Bureau of Control. Everything at this point becomes rather confusing for the first 25% of the game. A lot is left unexplained, such as Jessie becoming the director, having these unexplainable powers. She talks to herself a lot, but is also kind of talking to someone else. This bizarre and creepy chant you hear almost everywhere you go, and an odd area known as the astral plane that you're thrusted into at random times. However, this is all explained as the game continues, not leaving any plot holes. The game is full of interesting characters such as Emily Pope, a research assistant and analyst, Helen Marshall, the head of security, Zachariah Trench, the director before you, Dr. Casper Darling, the man who knows everything about the Hiss and the FBC, and the best character of all, Ahti, a Finnish janitor that just thinks Jessie is his assistant rather than the director. As the game progresses, monsters, otherwise known as the Hiss, become increasingly more difficult, each mission having a new form of Hiss, without you even realizing it. Some explode right when they get near you, others can control objects and throw them at you, some are invisible, some just have guns, and it's honestly stressful. You never know what to expect from the game, but I really enjoy that. 1 second you think you're safe, and the next 10 new Hiss monsters have reappeared. It's also a very aesthetically pleasing game despite all the creepiness. It has beautiful graphics and areas within the Bureau of Control that honestly took my breath away when I first saw them. The cutscenes are even more amazing, at times looking like a real movie. This game is unlike any other game I've played. I suppose, yeah, some of the concept, like power use for example, reminds me of infamous Second Son, but the actual structure and plot of the game is very different from others I've played in the past. Even Jessie as a character is super interesting. She's logical. You don't second-guess her decisions, and it doesn't have that cliche video game dramatics. A concept, though, that I really enjoyed was the health. It is not that easy to heal yourself in the game, having to rely on strategic movement and offense to keep yourself alive. The loading screen even tells you this. You cannot just camp and pray that you'll live. It's nice, because I feel like having potions or bandages can be a cop-out at times, especially in a game like this. Luckily though, the fighting is amazing. You have tons of free range and powers, so getting low on health shouldn't be an issue if you know how to properly utilize all this. There are even mods you can use on Jessie, her supernatural powers, and her gun. Another thing I really enjoyed was the fact that the game was in Metroidvania format, in which you can explore the whole map at a non-linear pace. Jessie gets different clearance levels throughout the game, so you can return to previous areas and unlock new side quests, items, and Hiss. I was honestly surprised with just how big the world within the game is. I was under the impression it was just one giant floor within the Bureau of Control, but there's at least 6 different levels with about 7 to 10 main areas on each floor, as well as the astral plane. Now, there are points throughout the game in which some serious frame drops occur. The times I experienced it was after every single time I unpaused the game, and at some moments when a lot of hits were all in one centralized area, which can really mess you up when you're in the middle of a battle. Another complaint I have is, like with most of these realistic games, during some of the cutscenes, the lips didn't match up with the voice acting. But honestly, I'm used to it. It happens in a lot of different video games, so it didn't bother me that much. A setback I had was actually understanding the plot and the situation at first. It wasn't until I started looking over the case files and audio tapes that I really started to understand what was really going on. You really do have to pay attention and read the documents you find scattered about if you want to understand the world within the Bureau of Control and all it has to offer. Everything in the game you find is important to understand what's going on within the game. Overall, Control was fun, thrilling, beautiful, and at times a bit silly and humorous. It's well-rounded, action-packed, and interesting. There are so many elements and features to this game. Puzzles, obstacle courses, boss battles, mysteries. Not to mention there are expansions Remedy is already planning to roll out in 2020, which may have a possible tie-in with the director's other game, Alan Wake. Control is a game that definitely has a hold over me. I know I'll be playing it over again very soon, and I'd recommend this game to anyone who loves a good story, action, and the supernatural. Overall, I'd rate this a great game. Control was a super enjoyable game, and not an easy one either. So, if you like a game with an interesting plot, hard missions, and beautiful graphics, Control is the game for you. Now, over to our host, Kristen Lawrence, who is sitting down with our PC analyst, Walker Peters, for this week's analysis.
The topic of loot box gambling has been a point of contention between gamers and video game publishers for years. Governments here and abroad have been cracking down on the regulation of loot boxes. Earlier this week, an official UK commission released a recommendation to the government that loot boxes should be regulated like organized gambling, including banning the sale of loot boxes to minors. Here to talk about the state of loot boxes is PC analyst Walker Peters. Welcome back to the show, Walker.
Glad to be back.
Okay, so why is loot box gambling such a big issue?
The biggest problem that the UK found in this report is how accessible it is to children. Any kid who plays online games, which is most of them these days, up to 70%, can just go online and using their parents' credit card, which may be saved already on the device, buy these in-game purchases without the full knowledge of what it is they're doing.
So what is the significance of the UK recommending this kind of law to the rest of the world?
So I don't think the significance is so much in itself in the law as for the UK specifically as it is that people worldwide are starting to take notice. Obviously, anything the UK does there might not affect the US, but just the fact that politicians have noticed it there speaks volumes as to what could happen in the US.
What are other countries doing to combat loot box gambling in children?
A lot of countries have already looked into it. Some Northern European countries, like Sweden, have released reports. Some have banned it entirely. Of course, in China, all odds need to be publicly disclosed for loot boxes and similar mechanics. And in some cases, they're banned outright. Of course, some companies get around this through legal loopholes, but it is a step in that direction.
So what sort of games are under attack from this decision?
Just about any major game these days is going to have microtransactions in some form, except for indie games and passion project games. Any AAA title, most mobile games sustain themselves off of microtransactions. And even games, free-to-play games, make almost their entire revenue off of microtransactions.
I was about to ask how banning loot boxes would affect free-to-play games.
So free-to-play games make most of their revenue from a subset of the player base called whales in the industry. Whales are a tiny portion of the player base, but they spend the vast majority of money on the game. Up to 70% of what the game makes is spent by whales in free-to-play games.
Are publishers shying away from incorporating loot boxes into their games anymore?
Absolutely not. It's one of the biggest revenue makers for AAA games. And from a business standpoint, there's no reason not to do it.
So the ultimate question, should loot box gambling be regulated?
I think it should, but it is a very difficult endeavor. Of course, if you look at the forms of gaming regulation already in existence, such as the ESRB or PEGI ratings in Europe, they're reliant on people at multiple stages sort of self-enforcing. The parents need to know that the kids can't do it. The store needs to know not to sell to small children, and I feel like it's a lot of the same issue with loot boxes. The parents need to be aware of what it is.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Walker, for coming in to talk about the state of loot boxes. Now back to hosts Laird and Sydney to wrap up the show.
Thanks, Kristen. That's it for this week's episode of Pixel Peak. We hope you enjoyed it. As much as I love it, being a host is tiring.
Don't worry, you get to relax with the analyst we're featuring next week while Kristen and I handle the news. Speaking of...
Next week, we won't be airing on Friday. Instead, you can catch us live Tuesday evenings at 7.
If you really can't wait a few more days, you can get even more Pixel Peak content by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Pixel Peak AppTV.
And we couldn't have aired this week's episode without the cast behind the scenes. Thanks to writers Jalen Curtin and Laird Davis, PC analyst Walker Peters, game reviewer Bianca Bortoluzzi, and producers Caitlin Halley, Tanner Mazzell, and Michael Annable for putting together the best episode yet.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed your stay here
on Pixel Peak.